Today on the M. Victor's History Show, one more discussion around the Little Brown Jug. And this one concerns whether the 1903 original jug that Michigan bought in Minneapolis in 1903 made it all the way to today. In other words, is the jug that the teams play for today the same jug that Michigan bought back in Minneapolis in 1903? I've done a few other videos in the jug around addressing some of the myths around the early stories and all that. You can see those on the channel. I'll link to them in the show notes. But I really specifically want to get into this. If you like these videos, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and comment if you have questions or follow-ups that you want me to address. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so without getting through the whole story, we know that the original brown jug, or the original jug, was bought in Minneapolis in 1903. And teams played for it in 1909. And there's a little question that the jug made it that far. In fact, there's very little question because the original paint job that Doc Cook, the Minnesota athletic director, and Oscar Munson, the custodian who found it back in 1903, that original paint job that they put on it, it endured into up until 1919 into the early 20s. It was a whitewashed with black paint. We have photos of it, and there's very little question that the jug survived. In fact, the teams only played a few times at that point, so it very, very likely at least made it there. Then things get a little squirrely, right? Because they did repaint the jug. They needed more space for scores. I think finally they realized, hey, this might be a thing, right? We might actually play for this, so we need some more space. And that's when the jug started to get more into the the two block M style that you see today. But in the 20s, it was a little different, which is important, and I'll get to that in a second. So, did it survive? So the big thing is, did it survive the 20s? Because there are reports that the jug was broken or damaged, possibly repaired. And then you have the 30s, which I addressed in another video, where the jug disappeared for 2 years, right? It was stolen from the administration building in Ann Arbor and allegedly showed up in 1933. Now, it does seem that all parties involved agreed that the jug, when it resurfaced in 1933, Michigan and then Minnesota, when they got their hands on it in 1934, when they whipped us, that they agree that this was the original jug. Okay, and for a few reasons, I think we can comfortably say that the jug survived from the 30s all the way to today, because on the original jug, there are replicas out there, right, that the teams have. There you can see some signs and indications in the paint, which we'll get into, that can date it at least to the 30s. So the big question is, did it survive that period from the 20s to the early 30s? And if it did, and if it was returned in 1933, the original jug, after it disappeared for 2 years, then almost certainly today's jug is indeed the original. So let's look at it real quick. So the first of all, I pulled in a guy named Ryan Forey. And Ryan, at the time, was the master potter at the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. Those of you from Michigan in the Midwest are probably familiar. But Greenfield Village is a place where Henry Ford really captured really historical artifacts, buildings, tools from that period, like the Wright brothers and all that. And, they had Ryan on staff, and he created, pottery. He was an expert. They have glass blowers there and things like that. So Ryan is an expert in pottery and stoneware from this period and made the jug. So I brought him in. He looked at the jug. He looked at old photos, and in his opinion, for a few reasons, he thinks this is indeed the jug we have today. Does indeed date back to 1903. He pointed out a few things. First of all, the handle. It is kind of a signature mark of a potter, the style of the handle. It is almost an exact match. We did photo overlays of the old jug with today's jug, right? and it does seem to match up. Now, you can play around with photos, and photos can be distorted, but the big thing that Ryan noticed and pointed out was this old style paint underneath the Minnesota Block M that you can see. You can see an outline of an older style Minnesota M. And digging through old photos, including a 1923 program and a picture of a Minnesota player from around 1927 when Minnesota took the jug back from us, you can see that style of Minnesota M. So that's a real compelling thing that says, hey, this jug probably dates to the 20s. And again, that's kind of the crucial period that we have to get through. The other thing is you can see what appears to be some of the whitewash original paint job underneath the paint where it's chipping off, again, especially around the handle. So the net of it is are we sure? I'm not sure. I certainly wouldn't bet a ton of money on it. There are stories in Oscar Munson before he died, I think in the 60s, said, yeah, the jug was replaced at some time, at some point. But we also have interviews with living equipment managers whose legacy dates back to Henry Hatch, who was around in way early in the jug rivalry. And these guys all say that the jug has survived, including John Falk, right? Legendary Michigan equipment manager who joined Michigan in 1974. There are other people who have said, yeah, it was damaged. We just don't have any evidence of it. The hard part is if it was broken at some point, it would have been horribly embarrassing for whoever broke it. And so, you can see they would have put some effort into maybe a cover up, right? We just don't have any evidence. And again, the visual evidence indicates there's a lot of support that this thing survived. No matter what, it at least dates to the late 20s, early 30s, almost certainly. It is an old jug. And by the way, if someone faked it, if someone went in and said, we broke it, we need to replace it, they did a really good job with the handle, with the size and style of the jug, which they do vary. They did a wonderful job. So let's hope that it survives on. One day, I suppose this thing will break. Let's hope it's not on our watch. Let's hope it's not in our lifetime. And, and that's the story. So I hope that was interesting. Again, if you like these discussions or these videos, subscribe on YouTube. Hit me up on Twitter or at nvictors.com. And for the M Victors History Show, this is Greg Dooley.